Hey everyone, it's John Trent here with Bounding in the Comics. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Jorge Arenas and Donald Edmonds. How's it going today, guys?
Going great, man. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. We are going to be talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And this is our inaugural episode of Trek Tuesdays, where we're going to be kind of talking everything Trek. We're going to be starting off going through Deep Space Nine and reviewing a little bit of Deep Space Nine. But we're going to try and keep it where this is just a Trek discussion and get some of us more knowledgeable about Trek, like Don and I, who aren't super Trek people, and Jorge is much more experienced in Star Trek than we are, and get us kind of caught up on Star Trek and check out some of the things that Jorge and Drew and Script Doctor have recommended to us, and kind of get on the page with why we should watch Star Trek and why we should enjoy it. So we're gonna start with Deep Space Nine. It was a two-parter, Emissary Part 1 and 2. This was the pilot. So we're going to be doing that. Thank you, Toxic Man Flu, for joining us. He says, "Oh, thank God I got this notification. The as and neurotic boarding stream was killing me." Oh no, that's not. Oh, well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. But yeah, we like both Nerdrotic and Az, but I don't know what they're talking about. But I'm glad you're joining us. So yeah, Emissary Part 1 and 2. I think both Don and I watched it on Netflix. Where did you watch it at, Jorge?
Yeah, I caught up with it over the weekend, dude. It was nice to kind of step back into it and watch one of the best spin-off pilots in TV history, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I guess leading the way on kind of how I was going to lead with it there, I was just going to go around the horn and kind of just give like a general reaction to the episode. So on Netflix, they've combined both episodes into one. It's an hour and a half total episode on Netflix. So let's just you can just keep going, Jorge, and give us your general reaction to the episode.
Oh, sure thing. Well, I believe, especially with Netflix now, this is the best way to deliver the pilot episode. You know, the two-parter in one shot instead of having to wait a week for the the conclusion. And after watching it again, I realized that it is by far one of the better spin-off pilots from a parent show that I've seen in television. I've seen a lot of shows try to attempt it. More recently, you had Supernatural and some of the CW shows attempted a few times. It never really worked out very well. It was really, weird. But the way this episode was able to connect not only the Enterprise D with Star Trek Next Generation and the Battle of Wolf 659 with DS9 and the trauma that at that time Commander Cisco suffered, it was a beautiful transition that not only had a connection to a different series, but also made room for it to bloom into its own story without having to fully depend on a parent series to carry it along. So if anyone wants to check it out, I highly recommend it. Even if you're not a Star Trek aficionado, it's a pretty good place to start.
All right. Don, what were your initial reactions to this episode?
The big standout was the wonderful shaky cam during the beginning. The potato cam, shaky cam, and then the clear
in the battle scene.
Yeah, the battle scene. The the apparent green screen showing the battle in space, and then every metal piece seemed to be made of plastic, or at least a light styrofoam. And it's the only thing that there was an inconsistency with the acting from Cisco in terms of how he would express himself. Oh, I thought you were in surgery, bro.
You said you just got back.
No, I'm not in surgery yet. I had my MRI today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I find out about my MRI in a couple days. I got an appointment.
But yeah, the overall impression is I it's brilliant writing, but the camera work needed a little more on the consistency with the acting, but the writing is brilliant, and I think that kind of trumps everything else.
Well, yeah, this was right from the jump. The way this kicked off, it was well written, and you know, I mean, Ron Moore was all up in this project at the beginning. Like he was the man. And you could tell because I pointed this out, Don. Like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the way that this style was taken right over to BSG. So you can see the dead comparison right there when you watch the beginning of DS9 because it jumped off kind of in the same way. The only difference being it wasn't a spinoff. But this episode was so good because you had that epic interaction between Cisco and Picard. You had that nice moment where O'Brien kind of got the send off from the Enterprise. That nice moment between Captain and valued officer as Picard was saying goodbye to him as he disembarked, and there were just so many cool things in this.
Yeah, I will agree with both with everyone pretty much. I thought this was a really well written episode. There were some times where I felt like they could have probably maybe cut it a little bit, and that might have been because they combined the two episodes on Netflix instead of having it them be separated into two episodes like they aired originally. I really liked that how they introduced everything. So we get introduced to all the characters. They all have their own kind of different personalities. Quark is like obviously very different from the Dr. Bashir, I think is his name.
Yes.
They all have different hopes and aspirations for what they want to do on Deep Space Nine. And you get that in the dialogue. You're talking about some good dialogue. I really like the part where like we get introduced to Bashir and he's like explaining how he wants to be a hero, why he chose to be out here in like the frontier. And then what's her name? Major Kira, I think is her name. And she's just like, welcome. I'm so glad that you wanted to be a hero. There's people that live out here, and like you get that like different perspective from her, and that back and forth, and that tension that you're gonna get. So you're gonna get like different perspectives from the different people as well. And then in contrast, you get the friendly relationship with Dax and Cisco, the loyalty of O'Brien. And I just liked how a lot of these personality traits came through and how they introduced the characters. And then you got the with Cisco, he's like such a multi-layered character already in these first two episodes. He's committing blackmail against Quark in order to keep the Ferengis running the station to entertain people and keep up this like, at least in this beginning here, this facade of things are going to go well to build up the hope. To make it look like a place that can project power and a place of stability at the same time. So I like that a lot too. I didn't have as much issues with the camera. I think that as Don did, I didn't have any issues with the shaky cam. I thought that it did what it needed to do for the battle sequences. I liked a lot of there was a lot of like meta politics within the within universe.
You're right.
Yeah.
Which I liked that a lot. And you had it from the Federation with Cisco and Picard and their own internal politics within the Federation, and him wanting to at the beginning not wanting to take the post, but he's doing it anyways out of his duty to Starfleet. And then you have this external politics with the this potential
wanting to
civil
get
war
into the Federation.
Yeah, Bajor coming into the Federation, a potential civil war on Bajor, and then you even have the external of the Cardassians, who I guess had like conquered Bajor and kind of still have this idea of using them and kind of exploiting them, and they had already like raided the planet for resources.
Yeah,
Which I thought that was kind of weird too, because if they're joining the Federation, is there even a need for resources anymore? But I guess there was, because they're talking about the replicators weren't working. But yeah, so that was kind of a weird thing. Maybe that needs to be fleshed out a little later. And then you also had all this so you had this spirituality as well in the episode with the Bajoran people. And then you had critics of spirituality from the Ferengi and Quark. And then you had a philosophical discussion where Cisco is talking to these beings in this wormhole about what it is to be human. So yeah, there was so much going on. And there was a lot of really, really well-written parts. And I think the dialogues between the characters was really what stood out to me. And then that discussion on humanity. But yeah, overall, I did quite enjoy the episode.
Yeah, all in all, this is the antithesis of what you see in modern Star Trek. This is just what's missing from shows like Discovery and shows like Picard, because they won't show you this type of multi-layered storytelling, nor will they discuss the interesting things about humanity from that hopeful perspective. And it's good. Like, I noticed the story that you guys put up about some attitudes might be changing, along the Star Wars front towards the way that they're looking at things. And, I think Star Trek needs to take measure of that too, because again, this is why people watched this show, was for this type of thing.
Well, I mean, the characters were also developed in a way, that gave out plenty of layering and development, room for development, and show that they were deep characters. Unlike where in modern current new Trek, where they require twists and turns and shocks, right, to kind of force feed development. Here, I mean, you're looking at Commander Cisco right now. He blames the Picard for Jennifer dying, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Battle of 359. And then he has to take orders from Picard to be in a station he doesn't want to be in.
I don't know if you. Right? So I want to push back a little bit on that, and this is why this is a discussion rather than not a review. Does he blame Picard? I'm not sure if he does specifically blame Picard. I think he's
pretty deep resentment because
I think
initially
that was Locutus who took the cube through Federation defenses. And at the end of the day, it was Locutus who, was hailing the fleet as they were being destroyed, essentially telling them to surrender, be assimilated, or else. And that was the last person, he saw after having to leave his wife on the Saratoga, to her death. So I thought that was, really, really good example of the contrast between character development then and now. And it shows heavily, especially in the first episode, first part, when it transitions into the second part of Emissary Part 2, because you see that big night and day difference between the interactions between Patrick Stewart's Picard and Avery Brooks' Cisco.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really get that he blamed Picard for it. I think it was more he's still just so emotionally vulnerable when it comes to the death of his wife. And you get that when you explore this humanity with the prophets, and he has to have this introspective with them, and then the focus is on the death of his wife and how he exists in that moment still, because he's still carrying that around in everything that he does. So I felt it was more the fact that he wasn't blaming Picard. He was just still so emotional, angry, resentful.
I think we can definitely agree to disagree on that point, because it's up to the viewer's interpretation. But another really cool aspect of this pilot episode that I thought was awesome was the introduction of Dax. Right.
Well, I do want to go back. I'm not sure that I don't think that there's. I think you can look at it, because at the end he's not resentful towards Picard anymore. They shake hands.
That's what I mean about the character development, though. Right? I mean, he went from being in one place with how he felt about the situation, how he felt about Picard himself, and he grew. And he grew to a place where that resentment wasn't so pronounced.
I think we're talking about the same thing with this character development, but I think I guess you believe that he was specifically blaming Picard for her death, whereas like I'm not convinced that that's the case, and then I think it's more the fact that he's just angry and emotional that she's dead, because he does acknowledge that he read the report and he understood that Picard was like under the influence of the Borg.
I guess I just look at the way he looks at Picard, and that's kind of the look you give someone when you want to put him through a wall, at the very least, right? It's not the most pleasant thing on the planet, you know.
I mean, he's definitely uncomfortable in that situation, and you can see his anger, but I'm not sure if it's. I don't know. I didn't see him as specifically blaming Picard for that. I saw it as more of his own internal turmoil, and he was projecting it at Picard.
I have to disagree there. I think he had to resent specifically at Picard.
Yeah,
it worked pretty well because Picard himself felt guilty about his time as Locutus, as seen in Brothers, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about that. So
yeah, I took it the same way. I took it the same fashion as Jorge did, because when I watched it, it seemed more like he was blaming Picard, almost directly for Jennifer's passing, and there was a lot of open hostility there. If you pay attention, you can see it in the body language.
I'm not saying that there wasn't hostility there. I totally agree with that.
I saw it the same way as like in Captain America Winter Soldier, Civil War, how Tony approached Winter Soldier after he found out that Winter Soldier had killed his parents. It wasn't a rational sense of he was understanding that Winter Soldier wasn't himself. He was another person when he did it, but there was still that kind of unreasonable kind of resentment.
Yeah, so I actually think that's actually a good comparison. But I would argue that instead of how Sisko reacted, Tony physically attacked Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that is.
And was specifically blaming him, whereas with Sisko, he was still like he might have been. There was like that underlying resentment and anger and hostility. He still respected Picard as the officer in charge as well. He didn't succumb to those emotions and lash out.
But you can
This is the future, and we're a lot more civilized in the future, apparently.
Yeah, he still maintained. He still maintained his composure as an officer and respected chain of command. But yeah, I mean, he was not a happy camper in that moment. I mean, one small thing he would have popped off, and
that's the whole point about that episode, though. He was put in a lot of difficult positions in one shot, right? It's Simon he doesn't want from a man that at that point he wasn't very too keen on, and then he's got a son, a dead wife. It's a lot of baggage there, and it really sets up the world building as the series moves forward, and provides the flexibility the series utilized very well to not only expand on Star Trek, but to expand on a lot of the lore that was touched very lightly on.
I think Barry on here brings up a good point. He didn't want to be there. He resented Starfleet in general and Picard in particular. Right, I think that's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that he didn't resent Picard. I do agree that he resented Picard. I don't know if he specifically blamed him for that death, and I don't think he did. I know he resented that, but I don't think he specifically blamed Picard for his wife's death. I think he resented the fact that Picard was the one who Picard's face was the one who killed his wife. But I don't think he blamed the man of Picard for that. I think he understood that, because the dialogue says he understands that. He recognizes that.
Well, of course, people say things but feel the complete opposite, right?
True.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, just in the overall beauty of this, just even this two-parter, you get so much character background and development, but it's funny because it still only scratches the surface, because as you take the journey of watching this show all the way like from season 1 through like season 7. It's like my God, by the time you get to see where Cisco ends up as a character, I mean,
It's a wild ride,
he-
man.
you realize that this is just a small drop in the bucket. You're getting an overview of Cisco, you're getting an overview of Dax and the rest of the characters, but my God, when you see like where everything ends up, it's just, I mean, you realize like, wow, this is just. I'm
We'll
seeing
get there.
maybe
We'll
10%.
get there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Dax, Drew, because for the folks who, if you don't watch TNG, Dax is actually one of the best ways to retcon a species or a character ever done. And the way
Yeah.
Emissary does it and the rest of the series does it fixes a lot of holes that were there when the Trill were originally presented, I think in season 2 of TNG. And then they built upon that, and it was just mind blowing. But I think she was her introduction and definitely Quark's introduction were my two favorite in this episode. They were just
Well,
really
Quark got introduced really though. Like we saw him a little bit in TNG, but yeah, I mean his introduction still was really good in this show.
yeah. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I just wanted to read a little bit of the chat here. Barry On was saying again, both the men in that, I don't want to go back to this, just so he wanted to keep him in the conversation here. Both the men in that room blamed Picard emotionally, but knew it wasn't legitimately their fault. And I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at. He's probably expressed it a little bit better than I did right there. And he does say here, Cisco has not moved on. Something with the face and voice of Picard just murdered his wife and several thousand other people. Now he has to report to Picard for a post he doesn't want. So it was 3 years, but and I think that gets back to the point where Cisco is meeting with the prophets and they're like, but you exist here. And they keep bringing him back to that point where his wife dies. And I think that's key there because he still exists in that moment. That pain is still present and prominent in him.
Yeah. And that's a risk that current Trek right now doesn't even want to take anymore, right? I mean, they show two characters in very compromising, vulnerable positions versus right now where it's all hey, I'm gonna curse, sex, torture, and hey,
they're like,
is he coming?
Oh, I'm gonna make my character so edgy and emo.
See, I haven't watched New Trek, so I don't.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm with you, Don. I can't really comment on that because I watched the first episode of Picard, but that was it. I haven't watched any of.
I didn't get an aneurysm is a miracle, John. You're a science, my friend.
All I know is that there's news that they're trying to get back to it with the Strange New Worlds or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to say. It's going to be back to exploring. And that's, speaking of exploring, that is one of the things that Cisco says is kind of at the core of humanity when he's talking to these beings in the wormhole.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Let's see. It is the unknown that defines our existence. We don't look for just answers. We also look for new questions. We are explorers. We don't wish to conquer you with weapons or ideas, but we wish to coexist and to learn.
Which I thought that was like really, I really thought that was kind of profound, but at the same time, it kind of also contradicts Cisco's own actions that we saw earlier in the episode when he's talking about maybe not so much conquering, but he does manipulate Quark by holding his nephew as hostage and blackmailing him in order to keep him on the ship. So I thought that was, we get at this idea that, and then even that was kind of expressed where it was like, do everything you can except violate the Prime Directive from Picard on his advice on how to maintain stability in outside of Bajor and everything. So I found that I really liked what he was saying, but then at the same time, I'm just like, well, he's not really living up to that. But that's also, I guess, this idea that Star Trek tries to show is that we have these ideals and we're striving to reach for them. And he's kind of saying that.
Well, that's the whole point, though, John. As we go forward in the series, Deep Space Nine explores duality of ideals and pragmatism, right? And it's perfectly displayed in Cisco and his decisions in 7 seasons, which hits its zenith, of course, with Moon in the Pale Moonlight episode much later in the series. So I don't see it as so much of a contradiction but as a preview of what the viewer can expect to see from this main character. He's has these ideals, but he has this personality which is extremely pragmatic, and he's trying to find the balance between the two. And up to that point, Star Trek didn't really explore how those two could go in conflict with one another. Until Deep Space Nine, and then later Voyager.
Yeah, I really like that. I that really like spoke to me. The fact that he's such a broken man, in this episode already. But he's also extremely intelligent. So he's emotionally broken with the death of his wife, but he's also very politically savvy. He understands the ways of the world. He knows about the Ferengi people. He also is very quick to grasp the situation on what's happening with Bajor, and then he's thrown into like having to be a ambassador or first contact with an alien species and trying to fight for humanity's entire existence. It almost seems like, because they're almost saying like, you want to destroy us, and we must destroy you, so you do not destroy us. And he's just like you said, he goes through all of these things in these just hour and a half, and it's almost a movie. It felt like almost a movie.
90 minutes. Yeah, it's about a movie, but it's one heck of a introduction into the series, right? I mean, you kind of get everything you need without the worry of a pilot not being able to be long enough to encapsulate the entire story without cutting out important aspects of it.
So let's kind of just go around the horn here, and everyone just kind of tell us what your favorite thing was about this episode, two-parter.
Okay, I'll go first because I keep bringing Dax up because that's just my thing. But when Cisco sees Dax for the first time as a female and sees Jadzia, recognizes Jadzia for being Dax before he knew Dax as Curzon, his best friend and mentor. I thought that was really amazing. Because again, not only retconning the Trill, which wasn't done very well on TNG, but it explored the idea of a friendship, going past bodies, right? Going a friendship that can go through generations. And that's an important friendship that is plays a very pivotal role for Cisco as a single father with his son Jake. Dax becomes kind of a weird hybrid between uncle and aunt, and depending on the certain circumstances, because the symbiote has possessed male and female bodies.
Yeah, and I liked how they showed that, and they used the orb to do that. I thought that was a really neat plot device to actually give us a little bit of exposition, an idea of like who Dax is. We got the little bit of dialogue, but to show us, I thought was really well done too. I like that. I did like that. What was your favorite part, Don?
That whole dialogue of trying to explain the human existence and trying to explain to this thing linear existence and how we define ourselves. Just a bunch of great lines in there. The game isn't worth playing if we know how it's going to turn out. How consequence and strategy and just how things turn out in the way we do things create a new possibility, a new reality that we have to shift and adjust to. A lot of those ideas are just, I don't get that a lot in writing nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's something that we don't see explored a lot anymore in our media. We don't have this idea of like what is at the core of human existence, why are we here, kind of things. Those questions are never really, I don't feel like they're very explored in modern media. I mean, this show is just 20 years ago, and those questions aren't even being asked anymore in shows today, I feel like.
Yeah, because it's like this is stuff like elevated thinking, elevated reasoning, and elevated understanding. And right now, with everything that's going on, I feel like we're just pigs wallowing in mud in terms of all of that.
No, that's right. I mean, this show speaks to you on a higher level, and you don't get that in most modern things because it just speaks to you at a base. It appeals to a very low denominator. It's not they don't try to appeal to that to critical thinking and upward thinking. It just we'll churn something out and it'll appeal to the low denominator, and it sucks. The things I think I like, there were three things that stood out to me about this, and one was just in particular Cisco in general. He goes from somebody that really didn't want this posting to, by the end of the two-parter, he's willing to give it a chance, especially after the interaction that you guys were talking about with the wormhole aliens with the prophets, and then after of course there was the really nice way that it handled, as we talked about before, the transitioning from the Next Generation into the show, where you saw like the really neat ways that it seamlessly bled into Deep Space Nine, and I like that. So I thought the character introductions were good, the interaction with the prophets, and also just overall Cisco's sort of journey from being really pissed off and not wanting to be there to open-minded, willing to give it a chance and to stand by his new crew. I liked all of that. I thought it was executed really well.
To me, so like one of the things you're talking about Cisco there is like you saw that Bashir had this excitement to want to explore the new frontiers. Cisco found that excitement after coming back from his talk with the prophets in the he found that excitement that he might have had before to want to explore. That's what probably drew him to Starfleet, and he found that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have to hit on the fact too, by the end of things, he also has a new responsibility on his shoulders, because being the emissary is a big deal. Because to the Bajorans, the emissary is almost like a pope,
Right. I don't think we've gotten there yet, though. I don't think they really showed that in this episode.
We see that in the next couple episodes.
Yeah. So let's
because she just touches his ear and says, "If you are here with us, but you don't want to be with us, you are an emissary." And I'm just like, that flew over my head. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I felt like that was foreshadowing for something to come. She talks about like his paw, and like she's like doing something to him, like metaphysically, when she's touching him, because he starts like reacting.
I thought it was a Vulcan death grip for a second. I'm like, what's she gonna kill him?
That would have been awesome, though, right? And just right there in the neck. No, but you're right, John. It does foreshadow a lot of what's going to happen, especially in the first half of the first season, right? As they establish Cisco's role with the Bajorans.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, Drew. I'm just going to mute you for a little bit. There's a lot of background noise. So Toxic Manflu says this episode showed the advancement of humans as a society for the better, but we still fall prey to our humanity with all its emotional pitfalls. Yeah, I think we saw that. We saw that in multiple characters. With Cisco, I would even say with Kira. I think I agree with Don. My favorite part was Cisco talking about this like core of humanity, and I think there's a lot more to explore there. I don't think he got to everything. he was trying to. I like the baseball metaphor, and I liked that, and I think there's a lot more to explore there on like what it means to be human. And I don't think he like fully encapsulated that, and I think there will be more discussions with this new alien species to figure out on that. But one of the things I also really liked, I liked Kira's. She kind of just immediately took over control of the station again when Cisco went off. She was having to deal with the Cardassians like attacking them. She was taking advice from the crew, specifically O'Brien, and then they tried to use all these different ways to kind of project power, but the Cardassians were like not having any of it. They didn't really fall for any of her feints. But luckily, Cisco was able to come out and solve things. And I think that was a weaker point of the episode. But I did like her kind of projecting that power, bluffing in a game of life or death with the situation, and realizing that it was better to bluff than to surrender. Because they know what happens with the implication that surrendering is worse than dying almost. So I also thought that was interesting as well. And that was probably like my second or third favorite part behind Cisco communicating with the prophets. So we talked about our favorite parts. Let's go about. Were you going to say something, Don?
Oh, you're going to say the least favorite?
Yeah. Worst part. What was your least favorite part about this episode? We'll start with you, Don.
I think I opened with it. The potato shaky cam.
Okay.
And I think it's because I got a new camera and I'm just experimenting with that and how the differences in the quality of what's being shot. So I see that I'm just like, wow, this is 80s bordering on 90s.
What did you think of Odo's kind of like shape-shifting?
That's like ghetto T-1000.
Yeah.
I didn't. And that's a weird thing too. He sleeps in a bucket. I don't know if this is the episode where he reveals that he sleeps in a bucket, but it's
Who wouldn't?
Such a weird creature. And why did he pick that form? And I guess that's going to be explained later on. But...
It does.
Okay.
It does when they speak about his species a little bit more and then later reveal their name. But I like the way they kind of like make you wait for it.
Okay.
Yeah, Phil's saying in the chat he has to revert to a gelatinous form for rest. So I guess they'll explain that. But there's lots of he was just another one of the characters where there's like this mystery behind him. He came from that wherever the wormhole is. There's a name for it, something Nebulon or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, your issue was kind of like that. It was dated.
Yeah, it's really dated.
Yeah,
the aspect ratio.
All right, we'll go to you, Jorge, on what was your least favorite part.
Honestly, this is gonna give me some hate, but the send off for O'Brien, I thought that was kind of cheesy. Like,
yeah, it was kind of weird.
Tiny bit.
Like, he shows up, he looks at the room, and then he talks to the commanding officer on deck, or I guess it was the commanding officer on deck, and they're like, captain's in the ready room, and then he's like, okay, and then he goes down to like just transport off, and then Picard like shows up and is like, hey buddy, and then he's like, let me just teleport out of here. And it's like, energize. And then he's gone. It's kind of weird.
Doesn't Picard have weird, like, touching moments with other characters, though? I remember seeing, like, relics on TNG. And he has this weird moment with Scotty on the old Enterprise. And I'm like...
Well, with Scotty, it was more of an understanding of where he was coming from, that displacement that he felt. I think... You're on to something, Don, though. He doesn't have the struggle snuggle tendencies as other characters, but it really depends. Like, especially around season 5 and 6, it gets a little weird with Crusher, right? Beverly Crusher specifically. On some episodes, we're like, okay, if you guys are gonna smash, just do it already. But that's another conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jorge. I thought that was kind of one of the weaker points of the episode. It was kind of awkward. Like I knew that. I think that was more fan. It was supposed to be fan service, I guess, for TNG folks. But yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, but the cool thing is though, they totally make it up with O'Brien later in the series. Like, trust me, guys, if you haven't watched it, he becomes a highlight.
We'll be getting to it. We'll be getting to it.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, what was your least favorite part of this two-parter?
I thought the entire episode was okay. I didn't really have like anything that stood out that was really bad to me. I guess on the cheese factor part, I can agree. The O'Brien send off wasn't as good as I thought. I liked it in some ways, but yeah, it was a bit cheesy if you look at it from just the flat perspective. I don't know. I thought that this episode was great. I mean, it was a great pilot. The second part was really good. I mean, I didn't have too much of a problem with it at all. There could have been a little bit more stuff with Kira early on. I thought they could have done a little more with her early on, but they still managed to get around to expanding her development a lot more. So, they didn't hit the ground running like they did with a couple of the other characters, but that's okay.
Drew,
I think.
Kira,
Yeah.
Bell, no Bell.
What do you mean?
Dax gets the bell for free.
Yeah,
When he's asking.
Kira looked good, but man, I'm sorry, it was all Dax.
Kira gets the bell from Quark, so ring the bell.
Yeah.
Oh my
There you
God.
go.
Like the lady in the uniform.
Yeah, I was
Get your hand off my hip.
I was all about Dax as well. We all crushed on Dax, man.
Man, the culture there, Drew.
And then when she was in what was it, Jorge? It was Hellraiser 3. I mean, it was all like, oh heck yeah. We were all over that.
Yeah, well, you got everyone knows in the chat know what to watch next on Netflix if it's on there. Enjoy. Courtesy Drew.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that man, Dax was a hottie.
Well, so did Dr. Bashir. He was trying to get that date right away.
Oh yeah, he was all over it.
Dude, Dr. Bashir, press F for respects, man. That poor guy was friend zoned for multiple seasons and never got
He was
near that. Holy
Oh
crap.
no.
Mhm.
Dr. Bashir is gonna get friend zoned? Oh no.
Yeah, he gets friend zoned all over the place.
A
Man.
for effort, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never gets the cookie, right?
No.
Yeah.
The jar's right there, but he never gets his hands inside.
Oh, Don, you not go to wet market.
Probably like my least favorite. I thought there was a little bit of writing issues that could have been improved. I think at the end, where Cisco just kind of miraculously comes out of the wormhole, towing what is his name, Gold Ducat's ship, in order to save Deep Space Nine was a little bit of plot armor. It's a little too convenient for me. I thought the whole idea of Odo being the bag and then what's his name, Quark is already part of it. I don't feel like that was explained very well. The setup wasn't explained, and then he just they put the bag in the locker and then it's Odo and then he just kind of shuts it down. Maybe I just kind of zoned out for a little bit or something, but I didn't think that was explained on what their plan. I think they could have maybe explained what the plan was there, instead of just kind of going into it. But yeah, those were kind of my two biggest issues, I guess. But yeah, I don't think I had any other real issues. I just We still didn't. I guess they talked about the Celestial Temple, and we never. I don't think we saw that yet. So maybe that's payoff later on.
I mean,
because he's supposed to seek.
There's
the
a lot
Celestial.
of world building in those.
Yeah.
In that pilot, and that
ton.
is a lot to take in, especially if you're not an established Trek fan. So I mean, I think that wasn't the best thing to do, but it was a very interesting risk that they took. That now years later, I think paid off pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts as we're hitting about the 3/4 of an hour mark here?
I mean, just as far as my outlook on it, I mean, I thought that this is a pilot that still holds up well. It's a great series. It's a great binge that holds up well. I mean, you'll be binging for a long time, but it holds up well as a watch overall. I mean, you watch this entire series, you're going to come away like, wow. You know, I mean, there's a reason why it's still my favorite Trek series, I think, out of all of them.
Yeah, I think one of our followers, he sent us a thing where Avery Brooks was talking about, he was answering a question of, how do you feel being the first black captain on the Star Trek show? And he's just like, I was just playing a part. I was just being an actor doing the thing that I needed to be doing. It was a job. I didn't think I was making any kind of revolutionary steps for, African Americans, And I think I got to give it up to him because he's approaching it as an actor.
Yeah, Avery Brooks
not as a freaking cultural movement or anything. Just I'm doing a job.
Yeah, Avery Brooks is a smart dude, man. He doesn't come out that way. He's not gonna ever like sit in SJW shell everything. He don't look at it. He don't look at it that way.
Yeah,
Well,
Phil says he said I couldn't play a color.
Yeah, that's what he said. Okay.
Yep, right on point.
Yep.
All right, you got any last words? Final thoughts?
2 things. Wonderful way to bring your friends into Star Trek and help them, explore the other series, especially TOS and TNG. They kind of takes getting a little used to, but Deep Space Nine and them definitely can guide you in. So I would definitely recommend that as a starter for a friend. And finally, just have to remember, someone had to paint all those dots on Dax. Man had the luckiest job for 7 years.
Yeah, no kidding.
Unless it was
If it was a man.
Yeah. Right?
You leave my fannies alone.
I'm looking forward to the next episode. We'll be doing these Trek Tuesdays every week, where we're going to kind of be going through Deep Space Nine, and then obviously we'll have it open for other discussions as we get new Trek stuff. We might be able to have some space in there for that as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to episode 3. Next week, and we'll start. I think we're trying to do it between 2 and 3 o'clock is when we'll probably start, and we usually go for about half an hour to 45 minutes for these. So we're looking forward to this, and hope you guys watch along with us. And we're glad so many people tuned in to watch, and we're glad we got to chat with you. And we can't wait for next week. So that Trek Tuesdays is a new thing here at Bounding into Comics, and we will be doing it weekly. We also do our Wednesday night Bounding Live, where we kind of talk about the headlines. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then on Fridays, Spencer and I are doing our anime rewind, and we're reviewing Mobile Fighter G Gundam. I think we're going to be on episode 7 or 8 on Friday, and that's usually between 4 and 4:30 is when we start those. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, for sure, guys.
Have a great day, everyone.
Night, guys.
And remember, wear a mask or get kung flu.
I sure do love a woman in uniform.